We're going to tell you how some of those corporations, some of the largest ones, are totally ripping us off. We've got the numbers to prove it. Plus, the Republicans have a new attack pack. It's called ShePAC.
I'm going to try to lead by example in this situation.
They claim that President Obama is against women. Well, we're going to attack that pack back. It's go time.
There is no corporate control here. Independent programming by an independent company.
All right, now we have developments in the Trayvon Martin case. He's, of course, a 17-year-old African-American teenager who was shot by George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida. Now there are support movements throughout the country, New York, Orlando, that are backing him up. In fact, there's a million hoodie march that's happening in New York right now because Zimmerman had said that, oh, he was so suspicious because he was wearing a hoodie. And, of course, if other people that are not African-American are wearing hoodies, they don't seem quite as dangerous. That's a point a lot of people are making, and we're going to talk to one of the people organizing that at some point in this show, at the end of the show, so hang in there for that. But also important developments in the case. First of all, the cops are now admitting, hey, you know what? Maybe we overlooked that racial insult in the 911 tape. Yeah, of course you overlooked it. We talked about that on yesterday's show, a horrible racial insult. Also calls for the police chief's resignation, which, by the way, we called for about 2 weeks ago. And the stand your ground law in Florida is now being reviewed. People are saying, hey, does that make sense given how it's being applied in Florida? And then, of course, there's the character assassination now of Trayvon Martin by conservatives. It is unreal. But you know what is also infuriating to me is how much people are questioning whether this case is about race at all. Now, here's Matt Lauer on the Today Show talking to the Martin family attorney, Benjamin Crump, and the mother. Let's watch.
Let me read you something that lawyers for the Department of Justice have said on the condition of anonymity, that while the investigation of the shooting of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin will go forward, it would be difficult to prosecute the case under federal law. Civil rights law protects against hate crimes or actions by police officers, but Martin's shooting may not have either of those elements.
Matt, it's real simple to us. He needs to be arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. Now, the state needs to do it. It's crazy that this family has to wait for grand juries and stuff when, if it was the other way around, they would have arrested their son on the spot.
Only two people know what happened that night, and your son, unfortunately, cannot tell his side of the story, Ms. Fulton. Are you worried that in a court of law it will be tough to convince a jury of the guilt of Mr. Zimmerman beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, there is some witnesses. There are witnesses, and I just want them to take a look at the evidence that they have. I just hurt, and my heart hurts because this guy has not been arrested.
You know, what's driving me crazy is this assumption that, well, if someone didn't directly see it or several people didn't directly see it, well, it's going to be hard to prove. Oh, boy, it's going to be hard to prove. No, there's so many witnesses that overheard it. There was a person on the phone with Trayvon Martin as it was happening. There's the 911 call with the racial insult. There's the 911 call where the police dispatcher says, don't go after him. And Zimmerman says, I'm going after him. So what's so hard to prove? I don't think it's a hard case to prove at all. I think they're trying to create an issue here, I guess partly because the police are on one side, and I guess people are afraid of calling the police what they are, which is at best incompetent, and in reality, I think grossly racist. And in fact, those police now in Sanford admitted to ABC News, oh yeah, oopsie doopsie, it looks like we missed a massive racial insult on the 911 tapes. Now you remember we showed this to you yesterday. We're gonna bleep out at least a curse word here, listen.
What entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Now, he used a curse word and then a racial insult. Now some conservatives are saying, did he say, really? Did he say coons? Maybe he said punks. Yeah, except we showed you the unedited tape yesterday. He didn't say punks. He said the other word. It's clear as day. So now, of course, others are outraged as well. Last night, NAACP President Benjamin Jealous said this.
Has a problem. And any chief who would allow his police officers to so mishandle a situation like this has to go. We will ensure that there is a new
So should the police chief in Sanford go? Unquestionably. This has been the worst conducted investigation that I have seen in a long, long time. Now, it only gets worse. Conservatives stepping to the defense of the shooter. Glenn Beck's website, The Blaze, had an article by a guy who calls himself Matthias Holt. I don't know if that's his real name or not. He might want to protect his identity given how atrocious and inhumane this article is, because throughout he seems to be defending the shooter here. For example, he says, the audio weakens the racism charge. How in the world does it weaken the racism charge? I mean, it's unreal that he could say that. And then he says there had been reportedly been suspicious activity in the neighborhood. Yeah, Zimmerman called 911 46 times. The guy's a lunatic. He sees suspicious activity the minute he sees a black guy. So now you're going to use that and say, well, suspicious activity in the neighborhood, so I guess Zimmerman must have been right. Then he continues, in a second call, one of Zimmerman's neighbors say the guy's yelling help without identifying which person is yelling. How about all the witnesses that have been on TV saying we heard the teenager crying for help? How about all those witnesses? Oh, no, I don't know. I couldn't tell who was yelling. Oh, who knows if it's the black teenager or the guy who shot him. I can't tell. And they continue. Well, look, this might be the work of an overzealous vigilante, though still probably not an illegal act. Now, that's the second time in the article he emphasized that, oh, no, please, of course it's not illegal. I mean, when you shoot African-American kids, it's of course not illegal. Come on, right? And just a little overzealous. A little overzealous when you shoot someone in the chest. And then it gets worse. He says he had been suspended from school. Oh, they got him. They got him. He was suspended from school. And he says, but what exactly was he suspended for in the first place? So here comes the smear. But look at how ugly this smear is. Not just, hey, a kid was suspended from school. I was suspended from school. What does that mean? That doesn't prove anything, right? But he then lists all the things he could have possibly, theoretically been suspended for, and has a 2-page list of all these smears of the possible things that Trayvon Martin might have done. Here, I'll just give you some of them. Breaking and entering, burglary, bullying, possession of simulated weapons, sexual harassment, grand theft, hate crimes, aggravated assault, armed robbery, arson, homicide, kidnapping, abduction, sexual battery. Why put this whole list up there and say, well, who knows? Maybe he was doing sexual battery. He had it coming. What is the point of this list? The point is to smear the poor dead kid. And they say, oh, I don't know. Can we blame the shooter? I mean, look at all the things he might have gotten suspended for at some point. He's like, by the way, you do a homicide, you don't get suspended. You get put in jail. Of course, unless your name is George Zimmerman. All right, now I'm going to bring in an expert here. Richard Cohn is the president of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and he has dealt with hate crimes before. But Richard, you know, first question, obvious question is, do you think this is a hate crime?
Well, it very well may be. You know, a hate crime is defined as when you choose the victim based on his or her race, ethnicity, or the like. And, you know, the evidence that we've seen so far certainly makes out a circumstantial case that Mr. Zimmerman targeted Trayvon Martin because of his race. So, you know, everybody on television, I shouldn't say everybody, almost everybody on television is coming in with like kids' gloves. Like, it could be either way. I don't know. I mean, I'm not quite sure. To me, it was obvious from the first day. You know, if you had a black guy shoot a white teenager dead, would we be having a conversation about, oh, well, you know, the white guy had Skittles in his pocket, so maybe he was dangerous. I'm not quite sure about the case. But then on top of that, you add the 911 tapes where he seems to say this terrible racial insult. So what's confusing about this? Why isn't this an open and shut case in terms of it being a hate crime? Well, Cenk, you're absolutely right. At the very least, it's a terrific double standard. You know, George Zimmerman presumes that Trayvon Martin is up to no good, is suspicious because of the way he's dressed, because of his race. The police, on the other hand, presume that George Zimmerman is innocent, acted in self-defense, apparently because he was targeting a black kid. So it's, a tremendous double standard here, I think, is obvious. The hate crime thing is is a matter of proof, and it's something ultimately determined in a court of law. I don't want to say it's obvious. I do want to say, though, there is certainly circumstantial evidence pointing in that direction.
Now, Richard, in order for the feds to get involved, you know, there has to be civil rights issues, and the federal investigators keep saying over and over again, it's such a hard standard to prove. You know, it has to meet a lot of thresholds, et cetera, et cetera. You know, given other cases, whether it was the Rodney King cops or other cases that have been in this field that you're obviously aware of, where does this rank with other cases? And does there seem to be enough for it to be a federal case?
I certainly think that it's enough for the federal government to take a look at it. You know, under the Shepard-Byrd hate crime law, there are really only 3 things that you have to do. First, the Attorney General has to certify that it's a case where the federal government has a substantial interest. Second, there has to be a situation where the victim was chosen on the basis of his race or ethnicity or the like. And third, there has to be the use of a firearm. And so we certainly have the use of a firearm. We certainly have a case where there's a tremendous national interest in the federal government getting involved. And so the real issue, of course, is whether the federal prosecutors feel as if there's enough evidence to charge it as a hate crime.
All right. Well, my mind is made up on that, and it's not because of my preconceived notions. It's because of the evidence. I hope that the feds can and the state level can reach that same conclusion. Richard Cohen from the Southern Poverty Law Center, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, now when we come back, Paul Ryan has the new Republican budget plan. They say it's to balance the budget, but I'm going to show you without no doubt whatsoever that is not the goal. The goal is to move all the money to the rich. Come back for that.
Here's the deal. You take away the tax shelter for the higher income individual so they can't shelter their income from taxation. You get more of their income subject to taxation, and you can lower everybody's tax rates.